cheated on me, and I was devastated. I was angry. I cut, I crashed, I attacked, I stabbed, I plotted. I did a lot of stuff.
I'm a firm believer that charity begins at home and then it spreads. And then I forgot that part. And so I contributed to the distance in our relationship.
I'm just saying, I like for you to look a little more like I like for you to look.
I started realizing how faulty I was. The fact that I've been a contentious wife the entire time I've been married to him. I'm sitting up here running around being the face of gospel, encouraging everybody, being more of a really good Christian in theory.
Like, I don't need you for too much of this because I run stuff. I got the baby, so I got love. I don't need the other kind of love. I'm fine, at least for a little while. You know what I mean? Because I got her. You know what I mean? And so he was just, yeah.
There are some celebrity stories that explode into the headlines, dominate conversations for a few weeks, and then slowly fade away. And then there are stories like this one. Stories that seem finished on the surface, but somehow keep finding their way back into public discussion years later. The situation involving Tina Campbell and Teddy Campbell falls into that second category. What many people originally viewed as a painful but ultimately straightforward story of marital betrayal and forgiveness has evolved into something much more complicated. Every time it appears that all the major questions have been answered, a new interview resurfaces, an old statement gets revisited, or a different perspective enters the conversation, and suddenly people find themselves questioning what they thought they knew all over again. At first, the narrative appeared simple enough to follow. Tina and Teddy Campbell had built a public image that represented faith, family, perseverance, and success. As members of one of gospel music's most recognizable families, many supporters viewed their marriage as an example of endurance and commitment. That image was shaken when Tina publicly revealed the devastating impact that infidelity had on their relationship. Her honesty struck a chord with countless people because she didn't present herself as someone who handled the situation perfectly. Instead, she openly discussed the anger, heartbreak, and emotional turmoil that followed. Viewers weren't hearing a polished version of pain. They were hearing someone describe what it felt like to have their world suddenly turned upside down. For many people watching, that honesty made the situation feel real in a way that celebrity stories rarely do.
Found out about it when we were taping the show. When we were taping a reality show called Mary Mary, if some of y'all don't know. We went through a season of her finding out everything that I had done.
The person who it was, she used to work for me. And so that broke my heart. She was like a godmother to my children. She had access to my home to come get my kids. And I said, "Are you having an affair with her?" And he said, "No." I said, "Call her." While we doing this, I was like, "Call her." And so he did.
But here's where things begin to take an unexpected turn. The more people revisited the story over the years, the less it seemed to fit neatly into the version that initially captured public attention. Instead of becoming clearer with time, certain aspects appeared to become more layered. Questions started emerging about timelines, relationships, and conversations that may not have been fully understood when the story became public. Then, another element entered the discussion when controversial commentator Tasha K suggested that both sides might not be telling the complete story. Whether people agreed with that statement or not, its impact was undeniable. It shifted the focus of the conversation. Suddenly, people weren't simply debating what happened, they were asking whether everything that happened had actually been revealed. That distinction matters because once people begin considering the possibility that a story contains missing pieces, every detail starts being viewed differently. Moments that once seemed insignificant begin attracting attention. Statements that appeared straightforward start being examined more closely. Interviews that were previously accepted at face value are suddenly revisited through an entirely different lens. And that's exactly what happened here. The conversation moved beyond a single act of betrayal and into something far more complex. Instead of focusing solely on what occurred, people began asking questions about what might have been happening behind the scenes long before the public became aware of any problems.
Tina wants to know, and and I said, "Are you sleeping with my husband?" And she hung up the phone, so I had my answer. So it broke my heart. I destroyed 3 cars. I cut up and crashed up and tried to stab and plotted murders and all kind of crazy stuff because I was angry.
Since then, I found out about more. And I don't want to hold on to somebody who I cannot trust.
You see, I have been trying since the very beginning. The situation gets a little worse, and then I try to forgive, and it gets a little worse, and I try to forgive. You gonna keep adding people? You gonna keep adding people? You gonna keep adding people? I thought we had a good life just like everybody else watching. I was 190% committed to that man. And this is what you did every time I was gone?
One of the reasons this story continues generating interest is because of how openly Tina discussed her emotional response to discovering what had happened. She never attempted to portray herself as someone who immediately found peace or forgiveness. In fact, she spoke candidly about experiencing intense anger and emotional devastation. Those admissions resonated with people because they reflected a very human response to betrayal. Many viewers saw themselves in those moments. They understood the confusion, the heartbreak, and the struggle to reconcile what they believed about a relationship with what they had suddenly learned. Her willingness to describe those emotions in such vivid terms became one of the most memorable aspects of the entire story. At the same time, Teddy Campbell's perspective added another layer to the conversation. Over the years, he's spoken publicly about personal struggles, poor decisions, and aspects of his life that he says he kept hidden. His admissions provided context that many people felt was important for understanding how the situation developed. Yet for others, those explanations didn't necessarily provide closure. Instead, they raised additional questions about how long certain issues may have existed beneath the surface. The more he spoke about internal struggles, fear, and secrecy, the more some observers wondered whether the public narrative had only captured a fraction of the larger picture. This is where the story begins moving beyond a simple relationship breakdown and into territory that keeps audiences engaged years later. Once discussions about timelines emerge, people naturally begin examining who was present during key moments, who knew what, and when certain realizations occurred. That process often transforms a straightforward narrative into a much more complicated puzzle. Every conversation becomes a potential clue. Every interview becomes a source of new interpretation. Every detail takes on greater significance because viewers start attempting to connect pieces that may or may not belong together.
And I was like, what if I kill you first? He said. He said.
No. This is what you said.
Don't do that,
you looked at me. You was mad because she was. She looked at me one time. She's like, "Don't you think you deserve to die?" And I was like, "Wow." I said, "Yeah." Oh. I said, "Yeah." I said, "The wages of sin is death." I said, if you kill me, I'm going to be with the Lord.
Because I repented.
But if you don't.
As that process unfolded, other names occasionally resurfaced in public discussions surrounding the situation. It's important to note that much of the speculation connected to those names has remained exactly that, speculation. Yet their continued appearance in conversations illustrates how public perception operates. Once people suspect there may be unanswered questions, they begin looking for connections everywhere. Whether those connections ultimately prove meaningful or not, the search itself becomes part of the story. Audiences become investigators. They revisit old footage, analyze past interviews, compare statements, and attempt to identify patterns that may help explain what happened.
He said, if you don't, I'm going to get you back.
Yeah, I'll make this up to you.
He said,
I broke it.
If you divorce me, I'm going to pursue you till I get you back.
Yeah, I did tell her.
And I was like, I didn't know.
She knew I
know
meant
exactly where we were in our house when that man said that. And I was like, he means it. He do to get me back. He did everything he said he was going to do. He did everything that he said he was going to do. So in the spirit, he ran.
What makes stories like this especially fascinating is that they often evolve into competing interpretations rather than competing facts. Different people can look at the same interview and arrive at different conclusions. One viewer might see accountability and growth. Another might see inconsistencies. A third might focus on forgiveness and healing. None of those perspectives necessarily cancel out the others. Instead, they coexist, creating multiple versions of the same story. That's one reason why public consensus remains so difficult to achieve. People aren't simply debating events, they're debating meaning. Another factor keeping this story alive is hindsight. Hindsight has a way of changing how people interpret the past. Events that once appeared ordinary can seem significant when viewed through the lens of later revelations. Conversations that seemed routine suddenly appear loaded with meaning. Decisions that initially attracted little attention become focal points of discussion. This doesn't necessarily mean earlier interpretations were wrong, it simply means new information changes context, and when context changes, perception often changes with it.
In 2013, where infidelity rocked the core of the family. It's all on you, Teddy.
That dynamic has become central to how many people discuss Tina and Teddy Campbell today. The debate is no longer confined to what happened during a particular period in their marriage. Instead, it has expanded into broader questions about transparency, accountability, forgiveness, and the complexity of long-term relationships. Some viewers focus primarily on the pain that was caused. Others focus on the efforts made to rebuild and move forward. Some believe the public has been given a sufficiently complete picture. Others remain convinced that significant pieces of the story have never been fully explained. And perhaps that's the reason this narrative refuses to disappear. Most public controversies eventually reach a point where audiences feel they understand what happened. They may disagree about details, but they generally agree on the basic outline of events. This situation is different. Here, the outline itself remains a subject of debate. Every new interview has the potential to reshape public understanding. Every resurfaced clip can generate fresh discussion. Every perspective seems to answer one question while creating another.
Kid, I filtered everything through it. Everything. So when loneliness showed up in my marriage, I went back to the old Ted.
Wow.
That's exactly.
Ultimately, the most intriguing aspect of this story may not be the allegations, the interviews, or even the public reactions. It may be the fact that after all these years, people are still searching for clarity. Not because no information exists, but because so much information exists that it can be interpreted in multiple ways. That creates a unique kind of mystery, not a mystery based on complete absence of answers, but a mystery built on competing explanations, overlapping perspectives, and unresolved questions. And that leaves us with the question that continues driving conversation today.
You know what I mean? A lot of fear that my wife wouldn't understand if I told her the issues and problems I was having. Because when me and Tina started dating, she didn't know that much about me. I hid that part from her because I knew it.
Are we watching a story whose truth has already been revealed and people simply disagree about what it means? Or are there still missing pieces that could fundamentally change how the entire situation is understood? The answer depends on who you ask, but one thing is certain. Years after it first captured public attention, this story remains unfinished in the minds of many people. And until those lingering questions disappear, the conversation surrounding Tina Campbell and Teddy Campbell will likely continue, not because audiences are looking for more drama, but because they're still trying to understand where the complete truth actually begins and ends.